This video was brought to you by YugiohMInt.com. Check out their selection of over 20,000 cards and prices better than TCG Player.
Alright, what is up, audience? MCool40 here. We're going to be talking about the North American WCQ metagame going into the North American World Championship Qualifier, or Nationals. It's just a week away. So guys, remember, check out YugiohMInt.com. They're bringing you guys Crusaders of Lornia, their trading card game that they're designing. Also, make sure you check them out for all of your trading card game needs, mainly Yu-Gi-Oh, Card Fight, Vanguard. They recently just got into Luck and Logic as well. So guys, give them a click down below in the description. So, you're going to Nationals this year, or the WCQ rather, and you're like, well, this is probably one of the most diverse formats we've ever had. You're definitely right. It's been probably, well, I can't think of a better format we've ever had going into Nationals. So, first deck to talk about is Monarchs. Now, there's the extra deck version and the extra deckless version. And then there's the Tzolk'in version, which you're playing Quick Draw Synchron. But you have three different variants of one deck. Obviously, Domain seems to be much slower now. Anti-Spell kind of just shits on it, unfortunately. The extra deck version, without Tzolk'in, definitely, it has its counter picks as well, sure. But if you're going into the event, you're worried about Monarchs, Anti-Spell is probably going to be one of the go-to cards that you're going to be looking at for the event. I know a lot of decks, Anti-Spell hits Pendulums as well, but it's definitely one of those things, more or less, that you want to make sure that you have the best cards that have the best counter picks for multiple matchups. And if you're looking at this list, you're probably seeing that there are multiple decks here that are being hit by Anti-Spell. Monarchs is definitely one of those that gets handled relatively easily because Anti-Spell is a card that does exist. So do bear that in mind as you're going into the WCQ. You are going to have to play extra deck or extra deckless Monarchs. Either variant, both of them are going to be predominantly popular. Definitely budget players are going to be abusing our good friend extra deckless Monarchs. Definitely you probably get Tzolk'in out of nowhere. Let's be completely honest about that. It's definitely going to happen multiple times. So, also, if you're playing Monarchs, don't get Magic Deflected. You'll have a very bad time, if you know what I'm saying. Next up is Cosmo. Cosmo's been one of the... I don't want to shit on Cosmo players here, but your deck is get to Tin Can, or get to Card Demise, send everything to the graveyard, strap on your helmet, pray you win the game. If you don't do that, you don't win. Obviously, there's the Fire King build, and I'm going to dub it as the standard build, which is probably Card Demise. And then I guess there's the non-Card Demise version, so you have three different types of Cosmo floating around in today's metagame. Obviously, Cosmo just gets wrecked by... I shouldn't even have to say this. Like, no one's playing Cyber Dragon right now. Cosmo seem like they're a relatively easy counter pick anymore. Granted, like, Drowning kills them, sure. Utopia, the Lightning. Cosmo has a lot of problems in and in itself. But definitely one of the things that, if you're really worried about Cosmo, just bring in Lightnings and Drowning Mirror Forces. You'll be fine. Next up, the best card in the Demise deck, Cleafort. Not really much I should say here about Cleafort. Your scout gets MST'd, and you don't get to your climate change. You're going to have a bad time. Granted, as I was talking earlier, this is the best card Demise deck out there. One of the interesting things about Cleafort that I've seen is if you don't get card Demise, you actually have to play this game. And I'm not going to take anything away from Cleafort players, but you're already relying on a broken card to get you to where you need to be. You're not going to have a super good time if your opponent opens up their 3 of MST or their Twin Twister to disrupt you already. Granted, yeah, you do have Necro Valley. You do pretty much shit on Cosmo. You have a very favored matchup against a lot of the meta. Pendulum's pretty hard though for this deck, unfortunately. Granted, most Cleave 4 players don't oversay it, but getting Royal Decreed's a real bitch. And next up, Pendulum Sorcerer. I'm going to dub this the Pepe deck. This isn't Magicians. It's just the standard magical abductor. It's whatever Pepe transformed into. You have several versions. You have this, and then we're going to move this over here. Alright, this is going to represent the Odd Eyes deck, Magicians. The thing with this deck and this deck is this one, yeah, you get Odd Eyes Vortex. This one, I believe, you can play Bambukus and Kurins in here. They're kind of the same thing, but they're not. You get definitely different floating capabilities. It's weird, but definitely the standard Pepe deck with Luster and all the other Famarinos. P5 is probably going to be one of the best decks. You also, you're not playing Magicians. Yeah, you can still play the Odd Eyes engine with Sky Iris. Sky Iris is going to be one of the best cards going into this event. Definitely a lot of people using Sky Iris for protection. Once again, also, Pendulums can abuse Necro Valley. It's something that a lot of tech choices haven't really talked about going into this big event, is the access to Necro Valley. Necro Valley. So yeah, so far we have three different variants. One, you're looking at 2 or 3, and then of course the Magician variant. Then you have the Odd Eyes Magician variant. So that's a lot of different decks. Going in to Magic Specters, Cordero did top 32 YCS Columbus, I believe, with Cardo Demise Magic Specters. Definitely something that's a little bit lower on the tier spectrum, because even though you're doing 2 different things to your deck, Cardo Demise does accelerate you. It's kind of like maining Thunder King Gadgets over all these years. A lot of people always question it as a bad play, but you don't always have to make that one play. Your deck can do multiple things, and because of that, it's definitely not a bad idea to have 2 backup plans in your deck. And I'm definitely not saying that as like an insult to some of the players that don't understand that, but not all decks have to do one thing. Multiple decks can do multiple things. Card Demise and Cosmo, yeah, you want your big ships in the graveyard, sure. It's definitely not a bad thing, deck thinning into more spells and traps. It just so happens that if you draw monsters, you can put them in your Pendulum scale. Same thing as Cleafort. Next up, PK Fire. Probably the most resilient deck of the format. It's really weird. This deck's topped and won 2 YCSs back-to-back this block. Going into the North American WCQ, I wouldn't be surprised if this deck wins. Looking at most of the builds, it's just definitely one of the most versatile decks out there. Being able to cover multiple matchups, having Breaksword and Dante in the same deck with multiples. If you get Ghost Reapered, okay, you don't just lose. Next up, the not so PK Fire deck, just straight Burning Abyss. This thing's been floating around for a while. We've come to know and love it. It's just Beatrice the deck anymore. You're not playing the PK Fire engine, you're playing just the Terror Top engine. Basically playing the same shenanigans without the extra engine of the PK Fire, per se. So definitely there's going to be a lot less pure Burning Abyss out there than PK Fire going into the event. I definitely guarantee you that, because PK Fire is, as I said earlier, one of the most resilient decks going into the format, just because of its versatility, the ability to adapt, and F-Zero makes your Cosmo matchup pretty bearable. You're probably like, why the hell is there a Cyframe driver up here? So, one person's going to lose at Nationals to Cyframes. No explanation needed. Cyframes is that deck that rears its ugly head. There's always that one guy that's going to play it. I'm not saying that it's a good call for the event, but it's definitely something that I'd be worried about in the back of my head. Definitely something else to really consider. It's just the fact that that deck does exist. So, adding something else down here. So, definitely be prepared for Cyframes, and not even 1% of it, just know it's there. Water's one of the silent sleepers as well in the format. I believe it just won a Nationals a week or two ago. Deck. So in a format where all decks have the same chance of opening up the same poop, but Water has that same chance of opening up but you have a higher OTK percentage built into your opening hand. So Water could be the sleeper deck for the event. I kind of doubt it, but we'll see. It's Water. Also, last but not least, I got to give a special shout out to Blue Eyes. The Gospel's coming out. Someone might try to do something with the new support. Granted, yeah, you don't have an alternative White Dragon yet, but it's definitely important to take note that Blue Eyes will have some sort of representation at the event. Definitely something to bear in mind as well. Just be aware the structure deck is legal. If you get a Morphage locked, well, shit happens. In the last deck, I know a lot of you guys have seen Cody playing the hand loop deck. Really annoying to get Trishula, Triple Omega turn 1, and then like drawing to 1 card in hand while your opponent has 3 Omegas coming back on the next turn. It's definitely something else. I believe Cody misplayed himself at Columbus where you would have seen the deck top. It's definitely one of the sleeper disruptor decks in the format. Watching that man play that deck is like watching really, really weird poetry up on stand-up comedy. It's the deck, you know the deck is going to shit on you, but you know that the deck is very inconsistent in what it does. If you play against that deck, I'm sorry. I don't have any effective ways to counter it. Veiler, probably it. Ghost Ogre. If you're really that worried about it going into the meta, something to consider. Just be aware that there will be one person in the room playing it, and if you get paired up against him, well, there's nothing I can really tell you. Just hold your ogres, hold your disruptive cards. That's why Veiler exists. So, remember, going into this event, anti-spell, don't worry about Ghost Reapers. I think it's a terrible side deck choice, honestly. I know a lot of people seem to like it for some reason, but there's no real reason. Secret Village is a really hot tech going into this event as well. Secret Village has been going up for quite a while. No real giving away anything there. You guys should know about Magic Deflector and Full House. Full House has been gaining a lot of popularity ever since Klee came to dominance. So, just a few things. Also, Royal Decree. But that's as much as I have for you guys in this video. So, guys, leave a comment down below. Check out YugiohMInt.com for all of your guys' trading card game needs. And I am out, guys. Peace.